Okay, Kev, you want to start with your part of the share and the dedication?
Yes, so I wanted to for a first speedy first Shlema for Liat Bat Chava and for all Cholim of Klal Yisrael, may they have a speedy first Shlema. So just a short idea
Amen.
from Parashat Vayikra, which is going to start next week. I'm 1 week ahead, and it talks about the sacrifices that people can bring for various Averot, and the ultimate. There are four sacrifices. If one can afford it, one should bring a bull. If one can't afford a bull, then they could either bring a sheep or a goat. If they can't bring a sheep or a goat, then they can bring a turtle dove. And if they can't even afford that, they can bring what's called a meal offering, which is flour and oil. And Hashem regards even that as important and sincere because they put their heart and soul into it. The people that poor people, that's all they could afford. So he regards that with as much importance as someone who brings a bull. So, because he sees the sincerity and the person is sincere, no one can spend.
Oh,
Okay, that's awkward.
So, just to finish off for the last 20 seconds. So, even if someone brings a meal offering, flour, that'll be mixed with oil. That's regarded as the same as the other more chashuva sacrifices.
Okay, so you're saying, look, I do know that the sacrifices are directly in proportion to one's affordability, so it still has to sting to a certain degree. For the reason is that you have to feel that it's a sacrifice. It cannot be something that doesn't come with a burden. That is part of it, but it has to be proportionate to what would be a burden according to somebody's financial means.
mm.
Also, one other important thing that you've got to know about sacrifices is that there's korban chatas for sin offerings and various other offerings, and it's not as if in certain offerings that you can do. There's a difference between b'shoigeg in a state of inadvertent or a state of unawareness compared to the fact that you can't do a sacrifice for an intentional sin. No other creature deserves to die or be sacrificed for your intentional malice or malevolence at all. So it has to be in a state of unawareness. And what it's meant to do is it's meant to shock you in the fact that that could have been you. All right. So let's just, for the refuah of your cousin, please God, she makes a full refuah. We're just going to share the Mishnah. We did cover this the other day. We have had
Does
some.
anybody know this guy? Just sent it to the group. This guy, Brett
Yeah,
Savitz. Does anybody know him? I don't know.
Samson.
He's about 45 years old. I'm just asking.
No,
Uh,
I
okay.
might
Maybe if
know
I
him
could
by
see a
face.
picture of him.
Yeah, but I don't know. All
No,
right.
it's fine.
All right. Um, I just wanted to share the Mishnah a second. I'm sorry, Gav. I don't know him. I might know him by face, but
No,
I don't.
no.
Yeah.
We could have dedicated to him if we knew him. I also don't know him. So
Yeah, I think, listen, one share is it just at least for the refuah, if we focus on that, that's somebody that can be saved. So I think hopefully that'll be a good thing. I just wanted to ask you, Gavin, you haven't read in a while. Do you want to read, or does anybody want to read specifically?
I don't mind if you make it bigger.
Okay.
Sorry, I'm battling to see it.
I don't have Braille. See what you can do with this.
I'm retarded, not blind.
Okay.
Gavin, no, you're not. Jesus.
Okay. All right.
Uh,
Although from the beginning, we haven't started it yet, yeah.
The
Although
be
the perceived
yeah, the
where do you
beginning.
want
Sorry,
beginning,
sorry. No, I think let's just refresh and we'll fly through it. Go for it.
All right. You want me to read the whole thing from top to bottom or funny part?
Absolutely. And then
Okay.
afterward, punished is another bit as well. Go for it.
Must I carry on? All right. Although the procedure of Hazamah discredits the testimony of witnesses at any point in the judicial process, the Hazamah penalty is not imposed unless the court has already pronounced sentence based on their false testimony, but had not yet implemented the sentence. However, if the Hazamah occurred before the sentence was pronounced or after it was implemented, the witnesses are discredited but cannot be punished. Zomermin witnesses are not executed as punishment for testifying falsely that someone was liable to execution, unless the verdict has been delivered before they were discredited. Before offering the scriptural source for the above law, the Mishnah digresses to a related matter. For the Sadducees,
Sadducees.
yeah, I got it right at the end. Took me a while. The
Seducers
Sadducees,
are another criminal subject, but these are also criminal, but in a different way.
okay, so this was in the right direction. That Zombie witnesses are not executed unless
Sorry.
the accused, unless the accused had been executed as a result of their testimony. As it says in reference to punishing Zommerman, a life in place of life, implying that the Hazama penalty is reserved for a case of in which a life has actually been taken because of them. The rabbis replied to them, the Sadducees has another verse not already stated, and you shall do to him as he planned to do to his brother, indicating that his brother is still alive. The term brother implies a living person. By referring to the accused as the brother of the Zomem witness, the Torah indicates that the accused is still alive at the time the witnesses are found to be Zomemim and punished.
Okay. Good. There's another part. I'll just let you read that.
Having produced biblical proof of their position, the rabbis refute the proof adduced by the Sadducees. But if so, that the punishment can be administered only if a verdict has not yet been carried out. Why does the verse say a life in place of a life, which implies that the accused life has actually been taken? Because it might have been thought that from the time their testimony is accepted by the court, and even before verdict is handed down, the witnesses are subject to being executed. Because at that point, it can't already be said that they plan to harm the accused. The Torah therefore states a life in place of a life to teach that they are not executed unless a verdict has been delivered.
Good. Okay, good. So what we're going to do is just quickly break this down in a very manageable sort of way and just go through the various quick concepts of what's involved. So the first thing the Mishnah discusses, for those that don't know what Hazama is, it's a reciprocal penalty. What is Adim Zomamim or conspiring or plotting witnesses, and they accuse the defendant of committing, in this particular case, a capital crime. There are many different accusations. It could be that they wish to cost the defendant money by either accusing him of stealing money or alternatively of not paying back a loan or a debt or damaging. So that's what they intended to do to their victim is done to them if they're caught out as conspiring against the defendant. You also have the same thing if they accuse the defendant of transgressing a negative commandment. That defendant, if he is convicted, would get lashes. But if their plan is caught out before the defendant actually gets lashed, then they are lashed for accusing him of breaking a negative commandment, which has the penalty of lashes. And then that's corporal punishment. Then capital punishment is they accuse the defendant of committing an act which is liable to the death penalty, and the conspiring witnesses are caught out. How they're caught out, there's a secondary set of witnesses that turn around and say the first set is with them in a different location at the time that they meant to have seen the alleged crime. We also did discuss in the previous Mishnah that's not considered conspiring witnesses if they said the victim was with them, if they were with the victim and the second set places the first set with the second set somewhere else at the time, nor if they say they're with the murderer. In other words, um, it's not about the murderer or the victim. It's about saying that the first set of witnesses were with them elsewhere, not whether the victim was with them elsewhere or the murderer. So what is this whole thing with the Sadducees and the Pharisees? Quite simply. So according to the Pharisees, which is the rabbinical opinion, is that the only time that the reciprocal penalty would happen to the Eidim Zomimim is at the point where the defendant has already been sentenced, but they haven't carried out that verdict. And then they can get the reciprocal penalty. If the second set of witnesses reveal the first set was with them somewhere else at the time of the alleged crime, then, but the verdict had not been sentenced against the defendant, then the case is dropped. And quite simply, we don't punish the conspiring witnesses because the punishment is only triggered at the point where the defendant is actually convicted, but they haven't carried out the sentence. So according to the rabbinic opinion, if the sentence has been carried out against the defendant, we no longer apply the reciprocal penalty in capital cases to the conspiring witnesses. It's all very clear so far. So why are the Sadducees having a different argument? Well, firstly, if you know your history, before the Common Era, about approximately 260 years to 10 years before the Common Era, so it's about a 250-year span, Tzadok was a disciple of Antigonus of Socho, okay? And he denied the divine origin of the oral tradition, and he actually refused to accept the interpretation of the written Torah as we know it today. Now, there was a lot of power that sect wielded. It actually considerable power, because if you look at the last 2 centuries of the Second Temple era, and during the rule of the Hasmonean king Alexander Yanai, the entire Sanhedrin consisted of Sadducees. And we know this. What time period? You're looking at about 103 to 76 BCE. And in Kedushin 66a, they even comment that the entire Sanhedrin was run by Sadducees. And then Hashem created a miracle where the people were not totally happy. And then it had to come down to almost like we have now, where you're having these normal discussions against people with very crazy ideas that, they call it injustice, but they can't offer any logical arguments. But there will come a time, and even politically now, where you're going to have to, instead of crying out about unfair policies and racism and prejudice, etc., you're going to have to demonstrate the untenability of the other position. And Shimon ben Shattach was able to secure the resignation of all these Sadducean judges. It was a series of debates, and then it just proved that it was untenable. And then the strength of the sages' position reinstated itself. But how did this discussion even come up? Is that when we discussed it with Gavin did bring a good point, and he learned something, is that he said, but, a kal v'chomer is a logical argument. And a kal v'chomer is more than a logical argument, in the sense that the il fortiori argument, which is the Latin derivative, means that, and even more so. What does that mean? In a case of leniency, if a certain punishment has been implemented, in a case when it's even more stringent, even more so that penalty should be implemented. Okay? And that's purely logic. But the issue with the kal v'chomer is it has to have also scriptural basis. So in other words, in order to apply a penalty that isn't there, you can't use logic alone. You actually have to have source material from the Torah to validate it. But you can use a kal v'chomer to perhaps break a punishment or create a certain amount of doubt to create a leniency, but not a stringency. What do we mean? is that we often have cases in Gemara where there are two different Tanoim, and one says, listen, there's a logical principle that refutes your argument, and sometimes it's an even more sarcophagus argument, and sometimes it's not. But if it is, then sometimes it's enough where the other argument itself might not be able to apply a punishment stringency unless they're able to apply a Talmudic or Tanaic source. Am I making sense, guys? So there has to be both bases. Now, if you have a look at the Sadducean position, it does make a lot of sense. Why does it make sense? Arth, why does it make sense? Okay. Yeah, please, God and Shemaim, it all comes back to you one day after 120. Yeah.
The Sadducees, where did they come from? Or what's their background? What?
Well, unfortunately, a lot of the Jews became Hellenized. So their position was corrupted. They didn't want to actually accept rabbinical opinion of the commentary of the Oral Torah, which came to us from Moshe at Har Sinai. I mean, I obviously can send you the history of, Christian doctrine, they actually support the Sadducean position, and we always go with the Pharisean position, which is rabbinic. Okay, they look at an eye for an eye as literally taking out an eye if you took somebody else's eye. They see it as a very, very literal translation. But in this particular case, when you're reading it in the Mishnah, it makes sense superficially when you look at the Sadducean position. Because what is the Sadducean position? It's quite simple. We're going to go through the Gemara, but I'm just, guys, going through a very quick concept with you, is that you say, look, if in a case when you're tempted as a false set of witnesses to have somebody killed, but you were caught out between the period of their sentencing, their verdict, and their carrying out of that sentence to the defendant, and in that attempt to have that innocent accused convicted, and as conspiring witnesses, they were caught out. On that basis, before the accused was actually executed, they managed to, in time, have a second set of witnesses that placed the first set with them in a different location. On that mere attempt to corrupt the justice system, guys, it's not about wasting the court's time. The court has no issue wasting their time to save a life. They don't see it as a waste of time. So it's not about the waste of time. It's about the corruption of justice. And that is it, in combination with getting an innocent person killed. So on that basis, what they attempted to do, Brendan, just give me one sec, is done to them. So they attempted to have a defendant killed, and they were caught out before the sentence was carried out, but the verdict was given. We killed those conspiring witnesses. But the Sadducean position is, if in an attempt that was not successful, we killed those conspiring witnesses, surely when they were actually successful in killing an innocent accused, even more so, we should apply the death penalty to these conspiring witnesses. That's the Sadducean position. You get it?
Yeah.
Question?
I learned something interesting with the judges when they would sentence somebody to death, they would fast for a day.
Sure, I didn't know that. And you see, that's how now they're at a level, because you get me too fast for a day. I'm generally much more conciliatory, and then I'll give everybody the death sentence. If you make me fast for a day, I'll be so irritable. I'm not on that level, but I didn't know that, Brendan. Really, thank you, man. So as far as the Sadducean position, on pure logic, as Gavin said once a week or two ago, it does make sense, Gavin, what you're saying. It does. But what we're going to learn from this Gemara is one simple fact, that you cannot apply a kol v'chomer based on logic alone. And we're going to see why. But we also going to use a source. And on this basis, that we're going to apply the one thing to the Eidim Zomamim, and the other one we're going to apply to the injunction of incest. Incest, again, for the whole family. Okay, so what we are saying is here, there's a pasuk that says you cannot sleep with the daughter of your father, and a separate part of the pasuk that says you cannot sleep with the daughter of your mother. And then, because then you're liable for kares, and incest is a death penalty offense. But we are saying then surely, this is the concept of how it goes. If it's got such an offense to deal with, to sleep with your half sister, then surely to have sexual intercourse with your full sister is prohibited. That's a kal vachomer. If a brother would get the death sentence for cohabiting with his half sister, whichever side it's from, and that would incur kares and the death penalty sentence, then surely for sleeping with a full-blooded sister, who's both the daughter of one's father and mother, then surely one would get the death sentence and get kares in that side, because that's a kal vachomer. If you get that for a half sister, even more so for a full sister, you get it. You get it. So what happens in this Gemara is it says, look, let's use the Adam Zomimim as a system. What you attempted to do to an innocent person, the Adam Zomimim get the death penalty, if the accused is sentenced but the verdict hasn't been carried out, then surely when it was actually carried out, even more so, the Adam Zomimim deserve the death penalty. Then it goes and contrasts that with the case of surely if it's kares based and death penalty for incest for sleeping with one's half sister, whether it's on the father or mother side, surely we don't need to be told from a kal vachomer that in fact you get the same penalty, maybe even worse, for sleeping with a full sister. And the Gemara says, no, you can't automatically assume a kal vachomer in either case, and we're going to discuss why. But that's the premise about how it comes about. When we're going to discuss why, but I just want to share the Mishnah with you guys and then go through it. Oh no.
What's the Torah's viewpoint on cousin?
Cousins are cool. That's fine. Yeah, listen, in Jewish history, people have married their cousins. The Rebbe married his first cousin. They didn't have children. I don't know if that had anything to do with it. I don't think so, because his children were his Talmudim. He wasn't meant to. I mean, he was so productive even till his old age. He was busy every second of the day. But in many cases in the shtetl, there's so much. I spoke to Professor Trevor Jenkins, who's the head of genetics for South Africa. He's a professor of genetics, and he said the best thing, he said, I hope you don't think I'm an anti-Semite by saying this, but when you guys marry people that have converted, it's actually very good for the gene pool, because although Ashkenazim have a certain level of genius, they might not live long enough to enjoy it. Because
Makes sense.
of that genetic pool. It's just so insular. Then you get up with people looking like Stephen Hawkins. So it's not always a good idea. You know who Stephen Hawkins is?
Thank you very much.
Yeah. So I just want to share one thing with the Mishnah, and it's going to make a little bit more sense.
Why are you doing that? If your sister identifies as your cousin, is that okay?
Yeah, explain the woke logic to Hashem. I'm sure he's got all the time in the world for that.
You don't have to explain it. He knows it. He just does. He's mystified himself. I'm sure.
Well, that was funny.
You know what? Okay, so let's just go back here. So, you see, as far as the Sadducean position is concerned, even they know for the Pharisees to have buy-in, there has to not only be logic, Gavin, there has to be a source derivative in the Chumash. Even the Sadducees know that the Pharisees won't believe them unless there is that aspect. Can you see?
That's what I was alluding to. That I didn't say it correctly, but that's what I was alluding to.
Okay, well, illusion and illusion are very similar. The same is Sadducees, and what was that other word you used? Jesus. What was that other word?
Damon.
What was that other word, Gavin? It had me in hysterics. What was it?
Just be thankful that I'm able to communicate at least at some level that you can actually understand what I'm saying.
What was it? Sadistic. What did you use the word?
No, I didn't say sadistic. What for Sadducees?
Yeah, you had another word. It was hysterical.
No. I was just trying to pronounce it. I didn't hear actually what I said. I was just trying to get to the bottom of that bloody word. I was battling.
Okay,
Couldn't
no,
see it
but it,
properly. I don't have the best glasses. My reading
no, no,
glasses
no,
I
no.
left
I'm
in my
saying when you
closet.
play back the share, it's hysterical because they were also a shocking group. All right. So listen,
No,
Damon,
I didn't do it
can
deliberately.
I just ask one question here?
yeah.
Just to clarify. So because the Sadducees didn't believe in the oral Torah, that's why they're disputing what should happen to Adam Zimmerman. Is that the whole point here?
Well, like anything, it's always about also power, money, and self-indulgent behavior. In other words, you got to look at why they didn't accept it. So people give a million intellectual reasons, but why do people not accept responsibility is the underlying cause because they want to live free lives without being told what to do. So at the heart of the Sadducean position is they didn't want to be servants of Hashem and constrained by the Torah's regulation. They wanted to do exactly what they wanted to do. They wanted to gain power and to run anarchy, pretty much. But they knew in order for the Pharisees to hold their position, is that they knew they can't just use logic. They had to have logic combined with scriptural source. So what was their logic? It was quite obvious, guys. If in an attempt to do this, the conspiring witnesses got the death penalty, even though they weren't successful, surely in a case where they were successful, they would get the death penalty because it was even worse. In other words, they said in a mild case where nothing bad actually happened, um, the Adams Amendment got the death penalty. When something bad actually happened to the accused, they should definitely get it in this case, not be off the hook. But what sourcing did they have? Look at it. It says in Devarim, Deuteronomy chapter 19, verse 21. Why do we use this verse in Deuteronomy? Because quite clearly, in Deuteronomy chapter 19, verse 19 is, and you shall do to him as he planned to do to his brother. That's where it's from. So this is the ongoing theme where it says a life in the place of a life. So that's their sourcing, mean that the defendant actually has to die from the accusation in order to kill the Adam Zomimim. That is their position, is that you can't actually kill the Adam Zomimim unless the victim himself has died. That's their position. And they use this verse in Deuteronomy, a life in place of a life. Okay? Now the rabbi said to them, there's a problem logically, because if you look at this Adam Zomimim source, and you shall do to him as he planned to his brother. So guys, in the logic, how do you know that the brother is still alive? Because if you're planning to kill somebody and they're already dead, why would you plan to kill somebody that's already dead? They're living. So what this proves is that the term brother implies a living person. And you shall do to him as he planned to his brother, meaning that it was sufficient that the brother actually had a legal verdict of being dead man walking, but he had to technically be alive because you cannot do to him as you plan to do to his brother, because had the brother been killed at that point, then you can't plot against that which is already dead. So they said the only time you can do this is at the window period where that defendant hasn't been executed, but the verdict has been delivered. Do you get that? Guys, do you get it?
Yeah.
So in other words, once a guilty verdict has been delivered against the accused, it can be said, at least in a nominal way, that a life has been taken, because in Torah law, there's no separate sentencing procedure, Brendan. Rather, the verdict includes the sentence. We've gone through this in secular law.
Mhm.
There could be extenuating circumstances. It could be a felony charge. It could be multiple track records of bad behavior. The intent could be premeditation as opposed to just anger. So, but with the Torah, the sentence and the verdict is very, very clear. And it's also very quick. So in a legal sense, from the moment a death sentence is pronounced, the condemned is legally considered a dead person. So therefore, you fulfilled the edict, a life for a life, but the person is still technically alive, and you would have to do that in order to fill the scriptural source and you shall do to him as you plan to do to his brother. Because if his brother's dead, how can you plot against somebody that's already dead? You have to want to intend it, so it's got to be at that short window period. Does everybody get that? Then we can go on next time. We can end early. Okay, makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Any questions?
Yeah, a quarter past tomorrow. Is a quarter past every day now? Is that the
Yeah,
confirmed?
look, Lance needs to leave the office at 6. So I think if we do it at 5:10, he doesn't have to wait for everybody to. He doesn't have to lock up. So let's do it at 5:10. Is that better for you, Lance?
I'm happy either way.
Okay, so let's do it at 10:10 because in case somebody has a connectivity problem, we actually start at 15:15. I think that's better.
Yeah, or we need to make time for noodles as well.
Yeah. So all right, thank you very much. And yeah, we'll actually go through the Gemara, but you understand the concepts. It's not very difficult. Okay.
Yeah.
I'll see you guys tomorrow at 10:10. Thanks.
Sure.
Awesome. Thanks,
Yeah.
Paul.
Well,
Yeah.
good.